Our next panel is titled Indicators of Ecological Collapse. For questions, there's cards and pencils on this side of the stage, and if you come and you pass them at this side of the stage, somebody will pass them up to the stage. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Saba. All right, speakers, come on out. Okay, I hope that person who got their car broken into gets something figured out. That's pretty awful. Okay, so thanks for that introduction, Saba. This next panel is, I think it's really important to me because it's so rare to find honesty in the environmental movement. Not many people are really willing to confront the reality of the situation we face. I think that's really understandable because that's a hard reality to face. But it's my belief that only by truthfully looking at the situation and moving through the process of grief can we come to a place of action. So with that said, I want to introduce our panelists. This is Guy McPherson. He's a professor emeritus from the University of Arizona. Shortly after earning a PhD, he was hired into a tenure track. And then after about 10 years in that position, he began focusing his efforts on social criticism with topics ranging from education and evolution to global climate change. He decided to walk away from his tenured position and explains his reasons in his book, Walking Away from Empire, A Personal Journey. Next over here is Dahr Jamail, who in late 2003, weary of the overall failure of the US media to accurately report on the realities of the war in Iraq, Dahr Jamail went to the Middle East himself to report on the war, where he spent more than 1 year there as one of the few independent US journalists in the country. Dahr has also reported from Syria, Lebanon, Turkey, and Jordan, and focused on veterans' resistance against US foreign policy, and is now focused largely on climate change. Next up is Diane Wilson, who is an eco-warrior in action. Diane Wilson is a fourth-generation shrimper who began fishing the bays on the Gulf Coast of Texas at the age of 8. In 1989, while running her brother's fish house at the dock and mending nets, she read a newspaper article that listed her home as the #1 toxic polluting county in the country. She set up a meeting in the town hall to discuss what the chemical plants were doing to the local bays, and thus began her life as an environmental activist. Yeah. Threatened by thugs and despised by her neighbors, Wilson insisted the truth be told and that Formosa Plastics stop dumping toxics into the bay. Since then, she has launched legislative campaigns, demonstrations, and countless hunger strikes to raise awareness for environmental and human rights abuses. She is also the co-founder of Code Pink, among several other organizations. And last but not least, we have Richard Manning, who is an environmental author and journalist with particular interest in the history and future of the American prairie, agriculture, and poverty. He writes frequently about trauma and poverty for the National Native Children's Trauma Center based at the University of Montana, where he is a senior research associate. He is the author of 8 books, including Grassland, Against the Grain, How Agriculture Has Hijacked Civilization, and Rewilding the West, Restoration in a Prairie Landscape. So, welcome. So, the topic is ecological collapse, and I think we're going to start off with Guy McPherson, and then we'll move on from there. Guy? Do you want to go?
I don't know. I don't know what to do. I never know what to do. Go to the podium, that increases the separation between me and you, and that sucks. Look at you, you're all sprawled out. We're talking about Earth at risk, it's all fucked up, and you have to be so far away from each other because that's what our culture tells us to do. So you run away, you can't even be near each other. So it's like, thank you for that idea. I might fall off, but I have faith you'll catch me. Earth is at risk. It's such an honor to be here. It's such an honor to document our demise. And that's what we have. That's what we're here. We're witnesses, right? Occasionally we're warriors, but mostly at this point we're witnesses as we observe the decline of the living planet. Goethe pointed out some 2 centuries ago, none are more hopelessly enslaved than those who falsely believe they are free. We find it tragic when wild animals are caged. Even worse is when they are born in captivity and they never experience the world as anticipated by their evolution. The same applies to domesticated animals, of course. It's tragic that they never experience the world as wild. All they ever know is enslavement. The same applies to humans, of course. We're the ultimate domesticated animals. We're born into captivity. All we ever know is our enslavement. Born into civilization, we know only enslavement. Most of us fail to see the bars that surround us. Goethe's line from so long ago applies, none are more hopelessly enslaved than those who falsely believe they are free. Imagine moving beyond captivity. Imagine moving beyond the mainstream, beyond normal. This seems so normal, doesn't it? Imagine viewing your place in a human community and your contribution to that human community as part of a gift economy. By adopting a gift economy, we strive to contribute instead of invest. By adopting a gift economy, we can focus on developing life-affirming ties instead of dreaming about a return on our investment. By serving our neighbors rather than determining how our neighbors can serve us, we become an integral part of a valuable system. As such, the whole holistic system becomes increasingly durable. Instead, we have the pathology known as capitalism, the nadir of civilization. In this system, big energy poisons our water. Big ag controls the seeds, hence our food supply. Big farm controls through pharmaceutical the behavior of our children by poisoning the water, also controlling our own behavior. Big banks control the flow of money. The criminally rich get richer through crime. That's how the whole system works because that's how the system is designed to work. Big ad controls the thousands of messages we receive every day. Through it all, we believe we're free. And try to change any of that. Florida became the most recent state to outlaw living off the grid. Many municipalities around the country, thousands by now, have made it illegal to grow food in your front yard. It's illegal to harvest rainwater in most western states. So you can't control your water, your food, or your energy. Other than that, we're free. Ain't it awesome? Awesome. There's a funny word. Awesome. When something is full of awe, we call it awesome. And when something is terrible, we call it awful. I think we got that turned around. Just an aside. It's a little late to return to the wild. If sufficient numbers of our culture abandon civilization and attempt to seek wildness, then industrial civilization fails. That seems like great news, doesn't it? And it is. Except, of course, that when that happens, the collapse of industrial civilization occurs, which leads to immediate catastrophic meltdown of the world's nuclear facilities. There's more than 400 of them, and that's hardly a desirable outcome. Collapse of industrial civilization leads to immediate catastrophic warming of the planet, too. When the sulfates are no longer added to the atmosphere, when they fall out of the sky and stop serving as an umbrella that cools us, Earth warms above the much ballyhooed and stunningly ignorant political target of 2°C above baseline. And quickly, too, as in with a matter of days, maybe weeks. Within the interior of large continents, failure to sustain this unsustainable set of living arrangements means there will be no habitat for humans within a very short period of time. And of course, sustaining industrial civilization has the same outcome, albeit involving more people and more non-human species driven to extinction. Already 5 million people die early deaths as a result of climate change every year. People ask me all the time, when is climate change going to get real? Well, if you're in the families of the 5 million, it's real. The people who ask, of course, are referring to civilized white people. If you're among the 2 billion people on the brink of starvation every day, the day is here. If you're among the families of the 5 million who die early deaths every year, the day is here. If you're among those without water or food on a regular basis, the day is here. The numbers are growing, a trend that will continue indefinitely. There's no escape from runaway greenhouse. we're done. We're damned if we do and damned if we don't. So let's do. Let's do something beyond the omnicide of the mainstream. Let's do something to stop the degradation of the soil, the fouling of the air, the polluting of the water. Let's do something to slow the rate of species extinction. According to a 4-year-old, undoubtedly very conservative report from the United Nations Environment Program, we're driving to extinction 150 to 200 species every day. Seems a pretty poor legacy for Homo sapiens, the self-proclaimed wise ape. I'm reminded of American political activist Mario Savio and his best-known line. He was participating in the sit-in at Berkeley Sproul Hall, just across the bay from here, on December 2nd, 1964. In response to a speaker, he said, quote, "There's a time when the operation of the machine becomes so odious, makes you so sick at heart that you can't take part. You can't even passively take part, and you've got to put your bodies on the gears and on the levers and on all the apparatus, and you've got to make it stop." It's that time. It's been that time since at least December 2nd, 1964. It's too late to save habitat for our own species. That's going away in the not too distant future. But we still have that oh-so-human construct known as our legacy. Apparently ours is the only species that can ponder its legacy. In the end, for finite beings such as ourselves, the historical process is irrelevant. All we have is our legacy, but that legacy is lost to us as individuals. Yet we are unique beings in that we are able to recognize the historical process as something larger than ourselves. We judge that process worthy or not worthy based on our own singular experience. We judge the universe. Fortunately, the universe doesn't judge us back. For me, the universe is a worthy endeavor because the lens through which I view it is colored with the relationships I have experienced. In my case, these relationships include humans and nature. Other species are relatives. Let's treat them as relations rather than resources. Indeed, let's treat ourselves as living beings rather than as resources, as human beings rather than humans doing. As Farley Mowat pointed out, we're under the gross misconception that we're a good species going somewhere important, and that at the last minute we'll turn things around and God will smile on us. It's delusion. I would change only one word. As a culture, not as a species. We're under the gross misconception we're a good culture going somewhere important. Let's do something to preserve habitat for organisms as we exit the planetary stage. Imagine with me, if you will, a single species beyond ours. I know that's difficult, even for those of us relatively unafflicted by the arrogance of humanism, but imagine a dragonfly. Imagine a single individual from among millions of individuals of a single species of dragonfly. It's a single species from among nearly 3,000 species of dragonfly. And of course, dragonflies represent a few species from among the millions on Earth. Take a look in your mind's eye at this single individual, this single representative of one species among millions. Notice its infinite beauty. Absorb its delicate yet durable form. Acknowledge the 300 million year existence of its kind, a tenure that exceeds that of humans by more than 100-fold. The dragonfly you see in your mind's eye is perfectly adapted to its environment. It is perfectly adapted based on millions of years of natural selection to this climatic regime, to this habitat, to this one place. Dare we dream to keep it? Dare we imagine to save it for another day, another week, another year? Dare we act in an attempt to preserve its fragile habitat until we are no longer able? The dragonfly is a single example from among many at risk on Earth. Our legacy comes alive in the love we feel for each other, for our families and tribes, and for the natural world, including the myriad non-human species with which we share this realm. Walking a path that honors the planet and ourselves as a responsibility we share, you and I, a responsibility unlike any other in human history. And it is not just a responsibility, but also something more. It is a joy and a privilege. Thank you.
I can't follow Guy's lead because I'd rather not hold the mic. Sorry about the disconnection. I think the three panelists' work speaks for itself. I don't know Richard that well beyond his work, but I think I can speak for Guy walking his talk, because as far as living large, in that I became aware this morning that he actually recently ate a Twinkie. So Guy actually does walk his talk. On that note, 200 species are going extinct every single day, as Guy just informed us, and this has been the case for years now. We are likely to begin seeing periods of ice-free Arctic by as soon as this coming summer, or the summer of 2016 at the latest. The 14 hottest years on record have all occurred in the last 16. August, September, and October this year were each the hottest months ever recorded, respectively, and this year is on pace to be the hottest year ever recorded. All this, and we are only at 0.85 C above pre-industrial baseline levels of CO2. Coal will overtake oil as the dominant energy source by 2017, and without a major shift away from coal, average global temperatures could rise by 6 degrees C by 2050, leading to devastating climate change. This is dramatically faster than the worst-case IPCC prediction, which has us at around a 6C increase by 2100. Please bear in mind that humans have never lived on a planet at 3.5 C or higher, and these dramatically abrupt and intense temperature changes we are causing mean that we lose our ability to feed ourselves, as crops cannot keep up with this speed of rapid change. And there is absolutely nothing tangible in the political or corporate world to indicate that there will be a major shift away from coal, or that we will surrender our addiction to fossil fuels. In fact, the use of both is only increasing, as are CO2 emissions right along with them. In the wake of recent news of global emissions rising 2.3% in 2013 to set yet another record, and marking the largest year-to-year increase in 30 years, the IPCC announced that the world isn't moving anywhere near fast enough to have a chance at mitigating the impacts of anthropogenic climate disruption in any real way. The Endangered Species Coalition recently released a list of things people should take their children to go see outdoors, because if they wait too long, their kids might not get a chance to see them before they become extinct. The list includes monarch butterflies, polar bears, great white sharks, white bark pine trees, and Snake River sockeye salmon, among other things. All this, and we are only at 0.85 C above pre-industrial baseline levels of CO2. To provide perspective on how far along we are regarding runaway anthropogenic climate disruption, another recent study shows that the planet's wildlife population is less than half the size it was 4 decades ago. More than half of the vertebrate population on the planet has been annihilated in just 40 years. Let that sink in for a moment. For perspective, once CO2 is emitted into the atmosphere, it takes 40 years for its full impacts to be felt. Hence, everything we're seeing now, everything I just mentioned, is a result of emissions up until 1974. Since 1974, we've emitted more CO2 into the atmosphere than all the years combined pre-1974. Lastly, and things I'd like to mention regarding where we are regarding climate disruption, the recently released 2014 Climate and Energy Outlook report by MIT tells us that global energy use and CO2 emissions will likely double by 2100. There are 5 stages of normal grief that were first proposed by Elizabeth Kubler-Ross in her book On Death and Dying. The stages of mourning and grief are universal and are expressed by people from all walks of life. Mourning occurs in response to an individual's own terminal illness, the loss of a close relationship, to the death of a valued being, human or animal, or the loss of a planet and everything and everyone we know. Stage 1, denial and isolation. The first reaction to learning of terminal illness or death of a cherished loved one or planet is to deny the reality of the situation. It is a normal reaction to rationalize overwhelming emotions. It is a defense mechanism that buffers the immediate shock. We block out the words and hide from the facts. This is a temporary response that carries us through the first wave of pain. Examples of this abound, but one is how the famed Northwest Passage is now being exploited by luxury cruise companies. Given the ongoing melting of the Arctic ice cap, a company recently announced that a 900-mile, 32-day luxury cruise there, with fares starting at a cool $20,000, so people can luxuriate while viewing the demise of the planetary ecosystem, is happening. Stage 2, anger. As the masking effects of denial and isolation begin to wear, reality and its pain emerge. We are not ready. The intense emotion is deflected from our vulnerable core, redirected and expressed instead as anger. The anger may be aimed at inanimate objects, complete strangers, friends, or family. An example of this would be the constant stream of vitriol from the far-right mainstream media who lash out at climate disruption scientists, even making death threats. Stage 3, bargaining. The normal reaction to feelings of helplessness and vulnerability is often a need to regain control. Examples of this also abound, especially right now. Maybe Obama will veto the Keystone XL pipeline legislation when it finally passes the Senate vote. Maybe if Hillary Clinton is the next president, she will enact better legislation that will mitigate global climate disruption. Mainstream journalists like Bill McKibben and Naomi Klein, who continue to lead people to believe that the government can be petitioned and changed, and this will save us. All of these are examples of bargaining. Stage 4, depression. The main type of depression associated with mourning is a reaction to practical implications relating to the loss. Sadness and regret predominate this type of depression. We worry about all the species going extinct. We worry about younger generations and how they will or won't survive. An example of this stage comes from Professor Camille Parmesan, an ACD researcher who is now blaming her depression on anthropogenic climate disruption. Quote, "I don't know of a single scientist that's not having an emotional reaction to what is being lost," she said in a 2012 report. "It's gotten to be so depressing that I'm not sure I'm going to go back to this particular site again," she said in reference to an ocean reef she has been studying since 2002. Quote, "Because I just know I'm going to see more and more of the coral dead and bleached and covered with brown algae." Stage 5, acceptance. Reaching this stage of mourning is a gift not afforded to everyone. This phase is marked by withdrawal and calm. It is this stage I hope to spend most of my time in. Frankly, I am bouncing in and out of it right now, from acceptance to depression to rage and back again. We don't know how long we have, 5 years, 15 years, 30, beyond the year 2100. But when we allow our hearts to be shattered and broken completely open by these stark, cold realities, we allow ourselves to have our perspectives blown open to vistas we've never known before. Like reaching new heights on a mountain, we can see things we've never seen before. Our thinking, attitudes, and outlook on life changes dramatically. It is a new consciousness. Perhaps there we can live this time with grace, dignity, and caring. Perhaps there we can find ways to save a few more species while we share this precious time with loved ones in the wild places we love so much in this rare and precious world. Thank you.
Are these, y'all can hear me? Okay, I'm gonna sit right here in this chair because this is the kind of way, I'm from the Gulf Coast and I'm a 4th generation fisherwoman, and this is the way I talk to the shrimpers on their boat. When I'm trying to get and recruit a demonstration, I have to go boat by boat. It's kind of like Cesar Chavez used to do. He said, "How do you organize?" He said, "You go house to house." And that's the way I had to do it with the fishermen. I had to go boat to boat and talk to them kind of like this, get real comfy and real friendly with them. And so basically, that's how I kind of work my way in. But I want to tell you that I'm a fourth-generation fisherwoman. My family has been on a little spot on the Texas Gulf Coast for over 100 years. My grandfather was raised in a tent on Blackjack Island. And the main thing about Blackjack Island is where the endangered whooping cranes are. And whooping cranes are about stand as tall as you are, and it's a place you don't often forget. So you have to understand, and I really empathized with those women talking earlier, talking about how important it is to experience being on the land near, you know, I can't tell you over my 25 years how many environmental conferences I have been to and how many people that have spoken and with usually three-piece suits and a lot of them are like presidents. I hope I'm not stepping on toes here, of the Sierra Club or the Audubon Society, and the thing of it is, it feels different, and you do things different when you are there on the land and you are one with the bay or with the tide or with the sandhill cranes or whatever. And so while I live on the Texas Gulf Coast, and just saying I'm from Texas is enough to make some people get really depressed. And so I really don't even have to say too much to kind of give you the idea of really how bad it is down there. Matter of fact, when you talk about the tar sands up in Canada, well, they're bringing them right down to Texas where we're at, and they just love it down there. And matter of fact, you can't bring in enough, and I'm in a little place on the Texas Gulf Coast, and in 1989, my tiny county, 15,000 people in the county, the little fishing village I'm from is 1,000 people. So we were the #1 polluter in the whole nation. We had more toxins, I believe, than any place in the whole United States. And this is not just me saying so. It was the EPA, and it was the first time they made the industries report their emissions to the air, to the water, to the injection wells, trucking them out of them cities, you know. And it was the first time, and we were #1. We had half the waste that was generated in the whole state of Texas. We had a chemical plant that made more plastic in 1 year. You could circle the whole state of Texas with plastic. And that's what we had, and they didn't have enough. And matter of fact, they were closing down the bays because we had saturated with mercury. We had changed the DNA of the cattle downwinds. We had changed the DNA of the oysters, and so that's telling you how bad it is. And I guess my point is that when you see this and it is your home and it is your entire identity, you sit there and you see it destroyed right in front of you. There was no way. You know, I'm not stupid. I'm just a high school graduate, but I'm not stupid. So the thing of it is I know when you see your community that was at once thriving, we at one time had 120 boats. They weren't rich fishermen. They supported their families. They were family shrimpers. They would go out in the evening, come in. They would be crabbing in the winter. They would do a little fin fishing. So we weren't rich. We were sustainable. We lived there for over 100 years. And then within my lifetime, within 20 years, the entire thing crashed. We have a dead town. We had 120 boats. We had 2 boats that went out shrimping. There were 5 fish houses. There is no fish houses. And it's like, what do you do? And the thing about it is, everybody around there, even the big environmentalists out of Houston, because they're always telling me, and they're always trying to mentor me, and they'll say, first of all, Diane, what you never ever say is saying you're opposed to progress. You're just trying to tweak the permit a little bit. You're just trying to get maybe out of your 30,000 acres of a petrochemical plant, you'll give 20 acres and put a little wetland so you can have a few ducks that'll land out there. That's their idea of mitigation in playing it nice. And the thing of it is, I don't know if I'm supposed to talk about just how bad it is, but I want you to tell you is that you come to a point where it's, all right, you just let it go. And really, this is really what's going on, and I'm just down there and seeing it, so I'm telling you that's the way it is, and it's that little disease, it's just gonna creep up all over the place, and what you do is, and what they're telling you is just, that's progress. You just have to move on. And it's like, do you just give up? And it's like, that's right. And and I am very fortunate. I can't tell you how fortunate I am not to be well educated. Because, and there is a reason for that. It's because you don't know what you're not supposed to be doing. And so the first thing I started doing, because, you find out real quick down in Texas, places like Texas, Louisiana, where they're doing the Keystone Pipe, that whole bit, there's things you're not supposed to be doing, but you can do if you don't have too many people around you telling you that's the craziest thing they ever heard of. And the thing of it is what I found out is that by putting yourself out there on the line where you make the level of commitment is 100%, it's not this 50%, it's not pushing the button on the internet and pledging, it's not giving $50 to Sierra Club, it's not sitting out on the weekend with the banner. It is putting yourself out there. All these wars, we send, how many of these guys and these women, we send them into Iraq with their very lives, and yet we sit back, and the minute it comes to a possible arrest, somebody's gonna, my neighbor's gonna know I'm doing this, if someone's gonna think I'm a little bit crazy, I think we need to get over our feeling of being crazy and just get out there and do it. Oh, I go. It's a good thing I looked at him. I got 1 minute. So anyway, all I wanted to tell you is that I did. I started fighting, and I found out you cannot, in a place like Texas, and I don't want to make judgments about other people's places, but in a place like Texas, you cannot work inside the box. And what I found out is I had to step very far out, but I'm telling you, it works.
Good morning. Thanks for listening. Aldo Leopold once said that the price of an environmental education is to live alone in a world of wounds. The good news is that those so educated are no longer alone. One no longer needs a special environmental education to recognize the wounds. Since Leopold's time, they've become everywhere visible and obvious. There is no shortage of indicators. Each of us on this stage this morning is assigned with choosing a favorite indicator, and in this matter, I'm afraid we suffer from an embarrassment of riches. How does one choose? CO2 concentrations, eutrophication in dead zones, extinction, poverty, deforestation, rising sea levels. So many choices. I can't disagree with any of these, or what others here have cited today. But I think there's something to be said for my own take on this, which is to argue that all of these are really indicators or derivative consequences of a founding disaster that occurred maybe 10,000 years ago. That disaster was agriculture. Further, the root problem can best be read today not in the headlines and published studies of distinguished scientific panels, but by the simple exercise of going to a supermarket and reading labels. Here you will find humanity's obituary written very clearly. Our bodies are alive, sort of. All 7 billion plus of them. But for all intents and purposes, our humanity died long ago. We humans continue to shuffle around as hollowed-out zombies. Clearly, modern industrial agriculture is intimately wound up in the environmental catastrophe that is erupting today. This is official. The catastrophe is nothing more than humanity's footprint on the planet, and the reputable accountings compiled by reputable scientists conclude that the way we raise food causes most of the footprint through problems like erosion, nitrogen pollution, energy use, carbon pollution, desertification, salinization, freshwater depletion, and poverty. This is beyond dispute. But the real and insidious genius of this system is its ability to perpetuate itself by domesticating humans as it did to livestock, enfeebling us humans past the point of all resistance. The deal is, we humans ran out of food and the ability to grow it somewhere in the middle of the 20th century. Ever since then, we have been growing grain with Green Revolution methods, which is to say, feeding all of humanity on very empty calories. Our system of agriculture cannot produce the complex array of nutrients required by our species, and so delivers instead an enormous lump of beige gruel made of cheap carbohydrates, lately mostly corn sugar. This is the news contained in the supermarket labels. This lack of diversity is a direct result of a lack of biodiversity. Like all other species, humans and human health require diverse and direct connections to healthy ecosystems. How could it be any other way? One does not need an environmental education to know that farms are not healthy ecosystems. Arrogance and ignorance have designed a system that has severed humanity's physical connections to biodiversity. And as a result, we are fat, sick, and stupid. For instance, the United Nations Food and Agriculture Organization will now tell you that a third of humanity suffers from what the organization calls hidden hunger, which is defined as a diet ample in calories but insufficient in nutrients and micronutrients. Anemia from iron deficiency, goiter from iodine deficiency, and blindness from severe vitamin A deficiency lead the list of the world's problems. That is, fully a third of humanity is blind or brain damaged to the point of debilitation solely because of the way we grow food. Another 1.4 billion people are overweight from eating a diet long on carbohydrates and short on everything else. Widespread conditions like marasmus resulting from a lack of protein and marked by visible stunting and listlessness are yet further consequences of carbohydrate subsistence. Vitamin B12, iodine, magnesium, cholesterol. Yes, cholesterol is a nutrient and we need it. Vitamin D, calcium, fiber, folate, vitamin A, omega-3s. Each of these was once plentiful and are now lacking in our industrial diet. More importantly, each of these is vital and necessary for brain function and physical health. The brain is an organ, and we are enfeebling it by depriving it of food. This is what I mean by domestication. For better or worse, we humans are who we are, or who we were, because of an extraordinary brain. Yet I believe part of the impoverishment of the plant's biota shows up as a compromise of our mental capacity because of general malnutrition. This is domestication. This is what I mean by domestication. We are no different in this than a feedlot Black Angus steer fattened on sugars, kept upright by an endless string of medications, head to trough, knees in shit. We are livestock. This is no small matter. Domestication is what deprives us of our ability to do battle, to summon subversion when we so desperately need it. Domestication of humanity protects plutocrats. When you think about this, it seems like a bit of evolutionary genius, a system so complete it comes with built-in mechanisms for fending off subversion. Fat, sick, and stupid, when once we were smart, lithe, agile, compassionate, amiable, and wise. For my money, this transformation of humanity is the most reliable indicator of decline. Our domestication. Once we were beautiful because once we were children of nature. We were wild, and we no longer are. During the Vietnam War, Gary Snyder wrote a poem titled Call of the Wild. It remains relevant today, and he ended it with this: I would like to say that coyote is forever inside you, but it is not true.
Thank you all for that. So sometimes the fake news has headlines that are more true than the real news. And one of my favorites was on The Onion a number of years ago. And big picture of an oil tanker, and the headline read, oil tanker safely reaches port in major environmental catastrophe. And I thought that was brilliant because it really cut through, so much of what we hear about, of course these oil spills are a huge problem. But what that ignores is the fact that the normal functioning of this culture, this society, is an environmental disaster on a magnitude, much greater than the spills, than the accidents. So I'm wondering if you all can speak for a moment about that.
I vote you lead.
Okay. Can you put that in a clear sentence?
Sure. Can you talk about the fact that this culture is killing the planet, and that why do you think it is that so many people ignore the fact that the daily functioning of the planet is a problem, and buy into the message that it's the spills, it's the accidents, that if only we do things slightly better, that everything will be okay?
I can talk about this as my own experience, because where I come from, no matter how many spills, no matter how many times a plant blows up, no matter how many times the cancer is rampant, people still get, like when I go home, people do not like my activism down there. The fishermen predominantly, they have lost faith. They believe you can't fight City Hall. So a lot of them, I think the reason why people accept it is because they lost faith in themselves being able to do anything. And matter of fact, I can't tell you how many times when I've gone to an environmental conference, I'll have some women that come up and they want me to do something, or they They want the key to it. And the thing of it is you know, and it's something I learned when I was doing when I first started, is like, I am not well educated. I'm a fisherwoman. I'm a woman, and I'm from a very small town. So really, and I believe this lie. So for the first 5 years when I was really fighting, I really kept waiting for someone else who was going to step up, who was going to be better educated, who was going to be well-spoken, who was going to have the respect of everybody, and everybody would just sit there and listen to him. And I found out after 5 years, I was the right person that was to be there. And I found that out. And the thing of it is that is what everybody should realize, is that, and when I think it was Margaret Mead or somebody that said that who we are looking for is us. And I think everybody else has forgotten how powerful they can be. I really do. I mean, there's a lot of politicians down in Texas, I know, but believe it or not, I did not vote. I won't say that real clear. I did not vote, because I guarantee you, where my faith lies with you people, that's where it is. That's where I vote. And people have to remember their strength and their power, and I think that's why people don't, because they don't think it's them, and it's better not to look at it if they can't handle it. It's control, or I don't know what it is.
What she said. I think that's right. The system is fundamentally irredeemably corrupt, and once you recognize that, you have two choices. You can stay within the system, or you can step outside the system. You can step outside the box you talked about, and most people are afraid to do that. Most people still love this system because this is the system, the other people that are taking care of them, that are feeding them, that are causing the food to show up in the grocery stores, and the water to come through the municipal taps, and I don't have to do anything. So why should I change that? Yeah, I think it's a little screwed up at the margins. That's what most people say. But so you know what the last thing left was in Pandora's box? Hope. We need to get outside the box. We need to move beyond that and leave hope in the goddamn box, by the way, because that's where it belongs, and take action to turn over the system, because the system isn't working. But most people think it's working, so they want to niggle at the edges. I mean, what I meant to say was what she said.
On. Yes. I'm not going to disagree with that. The system is lost, but the focus here has been on dysfunction in the system, and I think we should not be uninterested in function and when things are working well. And there are things that work well. The system is circles within circles within circles within circles. And when you find one little corner of that that's working well, then I think real change comes by understanding that, understanding what makes it work, and make it work better. And you look for those things. So an example would be, we can look at agriculture, which I badmouth it to no end. I've made a career out of it. But we can also look at another food production system like commercial fishing. We know there are problems with commercial fishing, but we know it also can be made better in some ways. And so we work with those systems to make them function. We should be interested in function and what works.
Okay, I got a few more questions here. So the first one here is, most activism starts after the horse has left the corral or jumped the fence, i.e. when the tar sands are already being mined, drilled, and shipped off, the pipelines are already built. How do we act proactively and get these things to stop before they've begun, or at least, before they get too far?
She's already said it. That woman on the stage said the right thing. She said, put aside all fear, and with the singular purpose become the point of the spear. Warriors we be, seriously real. The path before us be a spiritual deal. I middle fingered those Wall Street bankers, saying I warn you, all the true power is here in California. And more than concerning, our spirit be
All right, thank you, sir. I think I'm just going to cut you off there because people came here to hear these speakers. So if somebody could, thank you, sir. So just moving on. Thank you for that. Just moving on, since I'm sure everyone wants to hear the speakers. This is a question that's for Guy, but some of the other speakers may want to address this as well. And the question is, what about wind, solar, and hydropower? What about pixie dust? Will that save us?
I don't know about pixie dust. I've never done that. I had a Twinkie on the way here, that's already been told. But I don't do pixie dust, I swear to God. With respect to all those other things, this is the Jeremy Rifkin's idea of the third industrial revolution. And if you go to transitionvoice.com, I dismantle the 5 pillars of the third industrial revolution. I'm not going to go into that here. I'm going to instead count on pixie dust to save us.
I will just add to the first thing you mentioned. The Onion is the most trusted news source in the country, just for the record. And Diane, I'm from Texas too, so the state's clearly falling apart at the seams. I just want to throw out that I recently moved up to Washington State, to the Olympic Peninsula, thinking, oh, it's going to be so great, and chance to go into the mountains and find my sanity in between writing my stories and such. But in what I realized, and I knew this going up, but I guess I hope dies hard, hope springs eternal, has to be killed at every chance, was, there's battles to fight everywhere. And, with what's happening to the planet, there are no more local fights, that everything's universal. When China's doing what it's doing with coal plants, that impacts the entire planet. And, I just moved up to a different set of fights with fighting the Navy for, doing electromagnetic warfare training over the Olympic Peninsula, blasting EMF all over Kingdom Come and causing radiation, disrupting migratory birds, this kind of thing, fighting the coal and the oil terminals that are being built along the Sound to ship oil and coal over to Asia, from Canada and other places too. So, wherever we are, our battles are before us and they're screaming in our faces. And I think, it's basically at this point, choose a battle. And I think the most important thing is, echoing also what Diane said, is, jump in, throw our bodies out there and start doing the work, because at this point, what do we have to lose? We have nothing left to lose at this point. The war's been going on against us for decades, and, it's clearly long past time that all of us get involved and decide to put our, where's your red line? One thing that Derek Jensen wrote a ways back, there was where is your red line? Where do you draw that line in the sand that once that's crossed, you're going in, you're gonna fight, and there's like 350.org, like, oh, please, let's stop emissions at 350.org, and then now we're basically at 400.org, so is there gonna be a 400.org? And I'm paraphrasing him, but what is the next one? Please don't make our planet into Venus.org. Petitioning the powers that be, run that experiment a bazillion times, it clearly doesn't work. And yeah, at this point, all we have is outside the box. And again, what do we have to lose at this point?
So we've only got a few minutes left. On that note, one of my favorite petitions I saw was a petition. Those in power, please stop ignoring our petitions. A lot of signatures on that one. This is a question for Richard. You've written that sustainable agriculture is an oxymoron. Can you explain why?
Microphone, I need my electronics here. Sustainable agriculture is an oxymoron, and first of all, we have to know what I mean by agriculture. It's not all growing food, it's row-crop agriculture, the stuff that involves a plow, by which is most of the agriculture we do. It's an oxymoron because it ignores biodiversity. It's completely dependent on a monoculture. Nature hates a monoculture, and so to maintain that monoculture, we have to expend energy, pesticides, all those things that go into the degradation of the planet. And there's no way we can grow food in a monoculture and still have it be sustainable. It's that simple.
Okay, so we got a few minutes. Is there anything else that you want to say? Closing statements from any of the speakers? hard time hearing you.
It's to you. One of the things that you said was you talked about us humans as being fat, and I understand it's because of our unhealth that you're making that point. But unfortunately for women, we're already told to hate our bodies so much that how can you talk about our unhealth without dredging up sexist imagery that we already have to face all the time?
Yeah,
It's also the poor and it's also the racialized that are more obese.
yeah, and I'm not assigning blame to that, other than to the system itself, the way we grow food. But the uncomfortable fact of the matter is that a diet high in carbohydrates will cause people to be fat. Simple as that. And it's particularly egregious for women because of hormone interactions. So the reason that the high carbohydrate diet causes you to be fat is because the carbohydrates break down to sugars, insulin reacts to those sugars, and your hormones react to the sugar. That's a physical fact of somebody's body. But it's not assigning blame, it's saying, no, we have to eat better. But the flip side of that is, and one of the things that's even more uncomfortable to talk about, but I will talk about it, is things that are showing up now in the evidence like dementia, Alzheimer's disease, and even physical brain lesions on people who are overweight. It's because your body chemistry reacts with that insulin and causes your brain to be damaged. That is a serious problem. And so I'm even more controversial when I'm saying that, yes, it's making us be stupid too, but it is. But it is. It is chemistry. We are physical beings dependent on the chemistry in our environment. And all living things are. And so we can argue with it and say, well, it's socially unacceptable to say people are fat. They are nonetheless fat.